Hello and welcome again. It's another Thursday afternoon already. Like it feels like I was just talking to Simon a couple of days ago, and here we are again. It's Thursday afternoon, Friday tomorrow. Little secret, guys, it's my birthday tomorrow. I officially turn middle age tomorrow, 40. So to kind of top off the conversation that we had last week with Simon and Predictive CX, this week I've got Simon's other co-founder, Custerian, Nicola Collister, industry titan with us on the show today. Hi, Nicola. How are you?
I'm very good and happy birthday for tomorrow.
Thanks. I think.
I wish I was 40 again, I was going to say.
Well, as long as it ends in a Chinese takeaway, then I'm probably good. That's the best I can hope for these days, and a bottle
Brilliant.
from him. That's all I'm plumping for. For the members of the audience that don't know Nicola, where have you been? Do you not? How do you not know Nicola? Um,
I've been around a
um,
bit, to say.
I tried to summarize Nicola's LinkedIn experience in the write-up, and I had to dumb it down a little bit so I could fit it all in the amount of characters that I was given. But suffice to say, Nicola's been in the retail, service, logistics environment, and the contact center world for the best part of the last 25 years. Um, I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, Nicola, but great to have you on the show. And as I ask all of my guests, if you'd be so kind as to kind of tell us how you ended up in the industries, I guess,
Mm.
in the first place, and a little bit about your journey as you went along to where you are today.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I fell into the industry. I never set out to do this. I wanted to work in the travel industry. So I did my Kotak General and studies. But yeah, sort of went to uni. In fairness, dropped out of university. I was more interested in getting real life experience actually with businesses. And I thought, you know what, I can do my learning afterwards. So, went on to do my MBA sort of during the evenings and weekends. And started sort of my first career actually was at the RAC 30 years ago. So I got a fantastic job in the travel as a travel clerk. Then they closed all the travel travel places down, so I got made redundant. But no, that's when I moved into operations actually, and into call centers as they were then. So emergency breakdown call centers. So that was my start of my call center journey, working as a support person initially, and then an advisor, and then you say that was at 30 years ago, worked my way up into a leadership position in all various different roles, from operations to service to contact centers to managing the complaints team. Dealt with chairman complaints, you name it. So yeah, that was probably my. I fell into it actually. It was never a planned career move into contact centers, which I think for most people it usually is. I don't think we leave college or leave uni and go, I'm going to go and work in a contact center. So, but it's a fantastic, it's a fantastic industry and it's a fantastic opportunity to, I think, learn about all areas of business. So, and just I was reflecting actually when I was taking the dog out last night, just around, service transformation and innovation as you do. You either think in the shower or think while you're taking the dog out for a walk. So, and I thought, was it the right title? Should it have been service transformation and innovation? Have I actually done anything that's been really innovative? I'm not the next Steve Jobs, but have I done stuff that's been innovative in the service industry? And actually I have. I've always been, I actually have been a bit of a pioneer over the years of really pushing the boundaries and trying to do some things that are different, not just for the sake of it, but things that I have felt would transform service. And then, more latterly, the whole sort of end-to-end experience. So I was reflecting on my RAC days, and I absolutely loved that company. I was there for about 8, 9 years in my sort of early formative working career. And some of the transformative things we did there at the time, let's say 30 years ago, was things like self-managed teams. So, take the leader out and actually let's get the team to manage themselves. Clearly, there's a lot more around it than just that. But also home working. So what was really interesting is I actually tested about 28 years ago, the whole concept of home working, because, when it snowed, we couldn't get people into the contact center. So, and that's probably a whole other show on another podcast to talk about that, because it was just a disaster because we didn't have the tech, we didn't have the leadership capabilities, comms, everything was data center. So it was just too difficult. But that was my first venture into home working 28 years ago. I then moved into retail. So I moved to a company called M Brown. People probably know it better for JD Williams, Simply Be. They were one of the largest, in effect, catalog retailers at the time, and one of the first retailers actually to go into the whole space of e-commerce, as we know it now, online digital shopping. And probably one of the innovative things that I did there, and that was about 24 years ago, was self-serve. So there was a big push around how can we actually let a customer do things 24/7, and that came on the back of e-commerce being launched. So I'd seen something out in the US actually, which was speech enabled IVR, so where you could talk to a machine. Now, we sort of smile now because we go, that's just common practice. But 24 years ago, it wasn't. And it wasn't for a catalog business that had, in effect, older customers. So, actually, I remember a lot of the exec at the time going, this isn't going to work. People are going to hate it. And it was the first ever implementation at a joint venture with IBM and a voice company. It was the first ever implementation in Europe that they'd ever done. So yeah, it wasn't without its flaws, but I have to say, again, it worked, and it sort of set the scene for actually how customers would want to use self-serve going forwards. And then probably latterly, Very Group. This is all before I'd formed Custerian. So Very Group, and then into Yodel, Arrow Excel. So, and probably some of the things there actually, when I think about what, were the things that were innovative, the big push to online, so moving the business to, circa 80% online, it was pretty radical. And that was 14 years back, that was pretty radical in those times. It's not so much now. Well, I think the concept then of customer experience was actually quite new. It wasn't really a term that people talked about 14 years ago. And I had the role there of groups, sort of CX director. That was across, all the group companies and the different brands. So, actually, again, bringing that whole concept of, customer experience and focus, but also the fact that that could play a part in a transformation of a business, when actually was loads of other changes that were going on. That was probably, again, innovative of its time. It's not now, but it was 14 years ago.
I think it's interesting though that a lot of the stuff that you talk about there, there's still businesses today that still haven't got this technology right. And you'd expect that, something that's been about more than 10 years,
Yeah.
most businesses would have nailed on. I'm not talking small businesses, I'm talking big businesses with a good amount of innovation. As an example, the other day I was ordering some white goods. I'm not gonna name names of the company because I don't do that. But I'd already ordered a washing machine for my mum
Mm.
because hers broken down. Would arrange to have it delivered between, I think it was 9 and 1 or 11 and 4, something like that. Brilliant. And I had to go through to their customer service team to get it in place because it wasn't
Mm.
offering the free delivery options that was promised on the mainstream. Brilliant, got it sorted, delivered. Guys, couldn't have been any better. A couple of days later, as happens, the fridge went. So again, like I tried to order a fridge. I thought, brilliant, we've already had good customer service from the first time. Let's do it again. And all I could order was full day appointments for some reason. Couldn't order part morning appointments. Couldn't order the 4 hour appointments. And it's my mum's elderly. She's disabled.
Yeah.
She's housebound, so it's not good having early appointments 7 o'clock in the morning for her. So I went through the customer service team. Oh, sorry, the stores are shut at the moment, and I can't really help you. Right, okay, I'll ring back in the morning. And I got through. Oh, sorry, I work from home. I can't really
Yeah.
help you. I can't log in and do that. You'll have to go into one of the stores to order something online. Are you?
It's mad. It's just madness. And it's
£200 worth of business out
I
of it.
know. It's crazy. And I think it's, having worked in retail and logistics all those years, many, many years, it drives me nuts now that we're still experiencing this. And I've just had the similar experience of small goods, but from a pharmaceutical company. Who again, you sort of go, and I am actually ordering it and I've paid for next day delivery. The items have still not arrived. I ordered them last Friday. The messages that I've got, because the queues are 22 minutes to get through, well, the email message I've had back is because they've got a sale on and they're particularly busy at the moment. Well, Sorry, that's not my issue. If you put a sale on, surely you planned it and therefore you should have resourced appropriately. So yeah, as you say, it's and that's why I said about the title, was it the right title? Because I sort of think now, actually, does when we talk about service transformation or just service, it's actually service improvement. It's not transforming anything. It's not innovating anything. It's actually just, can you get your service up to, and on par with what a customer is expecting, and actually you should be delivering.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that should have been the title. If they, that's not a sexy title though, is it? But no, I think,
How do we
yeah,
deliver actual customer service?
absolutely,
I
absolutely.
think valid points though. I think to your point though, if you're not aiming for transformation and innovation, you'll never end up with the status quo. You aim for
Mm,
the status quo, you're going to end up with subpar. So you've always got to kind of aim higher and
mm,
reach for the stars, I guess. Um, so I guess then, out of such a distinguished career, what would be kind of the key learnings? Like, obviously, there's a lot of mistakes to be made in customer
yeah,
service, customer experience, transformation. What are the, I don't know, what's the top three things that you can think of
yeah.
where you could pass on to everyone?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, good question. I think the first thing that would spring to mind, because often, from a Custerian point of view now, obviously we're a practitioner based, consultancy business, and we get asked that a lot actually from our clients or prospects. So it's almost the, what should we watch out for? Tell us what you've seen before, or tell us what we shouldn't be doing or what we should be doing. So I think the first thing I would say, and it's again, none of this is rocket science. So, but equally, I can't believe how many times people would go, "Oh, yeah, I've not thought of that," or "I probably didn't put as much effort or time into that as I should have done." The biggest thing is, and this is again, even I was having a conversation with a COO last week of a very large retail business, and we were sort of chewing the cud and actually sharing stories. And again, it comes back to, most boards, most shareholders, most execs, and I've been in exec positions, I'm on the board of businesses. Actually, service delivery is still seen as a cost center. So, it's still seen typically as the contact center, as operations, as it's that thing that's at the end of the proposition and the end of the life cycle of a business. And therefore, it's a cost center. So, how do we manage the cost? How can you take 10% more out? How can you do, as you say, more for less? So, and I don't look, I think that I've always been in, commercial, operational type roles previously. And I think it's just a given that that is what, the board, the shareholders and the execs focuses. So I think that's the first point is, service is not often seen as value add. It's just seen as a cost to be managed. Therefore, which I'll come on to, it's really important that you almost recognize that and therefore change your narrative to address it rather than trying to fight it. I think in some cases, yes, push back, but I think there's a point of trying to change the narrative. Um, I think the second one is the fact that, CX is not the latest fad. And yet, there's so many things now that are talking about, oh, evangelizing about customer experience. And actually, again, I've been in place where people had conversation with me and have said, yeah, but I'm not interested in that fluffy stuff. So that's all very well and good. And I think because we've talked about things like wow, or what are the wow factors for customers? What are the net promoter score? Are you going to go and promote me to somebody else? Well, it's a good measure, but how often do businesses actually go out and prove that a customer has gone on to go and recommend them to somebody? Very few companies have. So, I think for me, as I say, CX is not the latest fad and it's not just the fluffy stuff. And actually, if you tip it on its head, if you provide a good experience, back to your washing machine and your fridge example, good experience will cost you less and actually will drive more revenue because customers will keep coming back to you and they'll choose you over somebody else. So I think again, it's probably a little bit more again about changing that narrative. And I think probably the third one being, you know what, I actually don't think there is any innovation in this space. So, and I'm probably, people will probably disagree with me. I'm sure I'm going to get tech vendors, hounding me, say, "Let me show you my latest innovative." It's not innovative. You know what? It's not. I don't think there's been a great deal of innovation in this industry for the last 10, 15 years. When I was going back to the RAC 30 years ago, that stuff was innovative. That was really pushing the boundaries. At JD Williams 24 years ago, and even very good, that was innovative. It was really pushing the boundaries. I think a lot of businesses now, service is in a place where it's so far behind where it needs to be. Us as consumers have moved on in our thinking. You're probably sat there, with your fridge and your washing machine thinking, well, why can't I do this 24/7? Why can't I choose whatever delivery option? Equally, to be fair, why are you not recognizing the fact that I need this and therefore could be preempting? So, we're in a place now where we're constantly saying to ourselves, oh, come on, surely this must be better, or this should be better by now. So I think for me, those would be the three things, as I say. Very little service is seen as value add. CX is not the latest fad, and good CX actually does cost less and delivers value. And actually, I don't think we should even be talking about innovation. I think we should now say, what are you doing to improve, and what are you doing to adopt and copy what others have done, and do it quicker?
You've single-handedly contradicted the whole title of the episode. I love it. You sabotaged your own episode. I love it. But like, there's nothing that I disagree with there. And we've talked, even TMAC. We've done various
Yeah.
outbound roundtables and stuff with Marianne Withers and Gary Gormley and some others. Very little service is seen as value add. Like,
Mm.
completely agree. There's so much that can be done. Like, businesses wait for the inbound calls when something goes wrong.
Mhm.
Who's doing the proactive outbound? Who's
Yeah.
trying to preempt those conversations? And who's looking at the propensity models for who's likely to contact you and what they're going to contact you about, and getting ahead of the curve so that your customer experience is just, to your point, it doesn't need a wow factor. It just needs
No.
to be on. That's what I expected them to do.
It is, and I think, as customers, put ourselves in customer shoes. People talk about, oh, we need to provide a great service or a great. No, do you know what? I'd just be happy if it was good enough. I don't need to be wowed by my fridge delivery. I don't need to be wowed by, I'm trying to order some, hair products and some, moisturizer I've run out of that, I forgot about and I'd just like to do next day, please. I don't need to be wowed by that. I just need it to be easy, and I just need you to do what you said you were going to do. And actually, in some cases, what I've paid for. So, and I think this is it. I think this is where businesses sometimes I think it's the lack of sort of being joined up and being aligned. Because another recent example, I went on a holiday for a girls' sort of weekend trip recently, and I won't say again, I won't name names or name and shame, but the flight company, somebody somewhere, probably in the CX team. So hats off to you for thinking about stuff, but push notifications. So they've clearly thought that, now because you've got the app, you've got your boarding ticket. So what we'll do is we'll keep sending you constant push notifications, giving you your boarding ticket and giving you updates every 5 minutes in the 3.5 hours that I was at a Manchester airport, who truly need to improve their customer experience. So I will call them out because everybody else has named and shamed them. But the flight, I don't need 5 minute updates I don't need to be trying to sit there to maybe enjoy the very quick glass of wine in the 15 minutes I managed to get in the airport when I wasn't in queues. Telling me that here's your boarding pass, here's your boarding pass, here's your boarding pass. So again, I think, you know what, I'd actually describe it as sloppy. I just think that's we've got push notification technology. Let's put it in there. I could tick a box and say we've got a great customer experience when actually it's really irritating. So, I'm sure there was some cost benefit case somewhere, but I think people are just being a bit sloppy with stuff now. Tech's there. So they're almost implementing it without even thinking about how they could implement it. And I'm sure if they had, your technologies such as TMAC in terms of phonetics, and were listening to what the customers were saying through, speech or text or CSAT feedback, because I can tell you now, I'd certainly put that on my CSAT feedback to them. Dial down your push notifications and maybe only send it to people at the point where they possibly need to go to the boarding, to the gate. That, there's technologies now that can do that listening, they can do that solicitation of feedback. It's again, I just think it's a bit sloppy. And I think that's where, there has to be more use of things like some of the products that TMAC have got, because it's not actually, that's not the barrier anymore. It's not that this tech isn't available, and it's not that it's so costly that I can't implement it anymore.
I think what I find so exciting in that space, in terms of our tech approaches that is, seeing people's face light up when I can say to them, it doesn't matter what was discussed on that conversation. We'll tell you everything the customer
Yeah.
said, every contact type that's hidden within that conversation, not just your initial disposition at the beginning of the call, or maybe a child disposition after about 2 to 3 minutes the agent selected, but actually here were the 15 other things that they mentioned later on that you can now take away and actually do something about if you
Yeah.
choose to. Um, and then kind of tying that up with how do we get that to the right outcomes for the customer? Because it's all great having those insights, but how many businesses get those insights, put them on a report,
Mhm.
send them to the C-suite, give themselves a little
Yeah.
applause, and then think, "Ah, brilliant, we know these things." Put them in practice, as you guys well know, is something completely different again. And I've heard you and Simon both say things around, change should be done with people, not to them. And I think
Absolutely.
businesses that are out there listening to this, that goes to your customers as well as your employees, right? Um,
It does. And if you take the flight experience example, if they went out to their colleagues and said, we're going to push notifications out to customers every 5 minutes, in the 3 hours to 4 hours they now need to spend in the airport, I'm sure their colleagues would have gone, really? I think that's really going to irritate people. They're already stressed to death at the moment because of the whole airport experience. Maybe you should only send it them one when they're going to check in, and then possibly when the gate's been announced, just prior to the gate being announced, maybe that would be better. So I think you're right. I think the other thing is you say involving colleagues in how people are, transforming service, because often it's done without even getting their input, or equally, their customers. So get them to test it out.
it's interesting speaking to somebody else who comes from a retail background because we all naturally call people colleagues. It's great. I've never met a retail person who fails to do that yet. It's brilliant. Um, so I guess what I always like for the audience to take away from the show is kind of actionable advice and learnings based on senior leaders' mistakes and challenges that they've
Yeah.
encountered. So for me, is there anything you'd kind of want to be able to take away from some of the conversations that we've had today?
Yeah, there's probably, you know what? There's probably three things. Again, I was thinking about this last night on the dog walk, and actually, just say
I like
chat
the
to
box.
who like dog walks. Yeah, I've got a Wheaten Terrier. Yeah, you have to concentrate on taking the dog for a walk, though. I have to say, he's very, very powerful. Um, no, there's probably three things, and also because I was, as I say, I was chatting to a COO last week, and I was actually chatting to a CEO the week before of a very large utility company. And we were just saying, look, sometimes, it is tough. You know what? It's tough out there at the moment. It's tough in business, certainly in senior leadership roles. It's tough. It's not, it's not an easy gig. But, if there's three things, I think not just for senior teams, I think for anybody that's involved in, service, in trying to change it, improve it. I'm not going to use the word innovate anymore because, as I say, I don't believe innovation is actually required. But I think there's three things. I think the first thing is back to that, that cost center and that cost value. I thought this a few times in my career where I was like, oh, for God's sake, why does everything need a business case? Well, it does. So, and the board, the shareholders, the exec, their whole mantra. Yes, of course, there are other things like ESG agendas and people and so on. But ultimately, every business is in business to make money, whether you're a PLC, privately owned, or a charity. If we make money, we can put money back into the business, we can keep people employed, blah, de, blah, de, blah. So, don't ignore that. And I think it's really important that you think about that business case and think about again then, what are the data points? What's the qualitative and the quantitative information you need in order to build that business case? Because I think if you don't recognize that and you don't put, upfront and enough time and effort into doing that, you might as well just forget it. Don't even bother doing what you're trying to do because at some point it's going to get cut. And I think at the point we're now going into, potentially recessionary times, everything, the business case more than anything will be my number one, sort of, almost number one. Worry about it, have sleepless nights about it, and do everything you possibly can to get you and your teams aligned to that business case. And that's again where, the likes of TMAC and the insight and the analytics, all of that can help feed and give you, that valuable information that you need to build a business case. I think the second thing then is is storytelling. I think we are often very good at going, I just need to crack on and get on with it. And we don't bring people with us. I was chatting to a client this morning actually who are going to go through a very large systems implementation, and it's much needed. But they're worried most about how people are going to react, how are people going to engage, are they going to use it, and therefore will it lead to delivering the benefits? And I was thinking about this, and it's almost like now we're so hooked on. I don't know if you've got Netflix. We're so hooked on Netflix, and I think, you know what? What a brilliant concept. Because in effect, what they've done is they get you hooked into a storyline. It's like the blockbuster movie and the trailer for the movie. You know, you have all you now pushing you, telling you what you'd like to watch next. So they hook you in. And then when you watch the first episode, basically you see the trailer for the next episode. So what you do, you stay up late and you watch the next one. So I think we all need to be a bit more like Netflix and think about how do we tell our story? How do we tell our story of the transformation, of the change, of the improvement? And, you know, build it like a Netflix series. So I think linked to the business case, because clearly, you know, you need to have got sign off first. So I think again, as I say, I think there's lots of sound bites and, you know, concepts that we can take from what Netflix and Amazon Prime and others I'll be getting in trouble off all the others have done. And I think that third point then, you mentioned it earlier about colleagues do, you know, do with not to. And I think particularly now in the post-COVID world, but as we are about to go into and are already in very challenging times, you know, cost of living crisis and so on. I think what worries me, and I do worry about it, particularly for the service sector, is the amount of businesses that are going to go down you know, I'm going to have to dramatically cut costs. I am going to have to dramatically get labour arbitrage and potentially, you know, push stuff elsewhere. Or equally, you know, chuck rapid automation programs in that don't work. And I'd just say you might need to do all of that, but just stand back and actually you could engage colleagues in that journey. I did that many years ago when I was at ShopDirect Group. And, you know, actually part of that transformation was actually about closing sites. And there were going to be a number of redundancies on the back of it, but I was transparent about that. And I said, times are changing. Customers are moving online. You know, they want to do things for themselves. The business needs to change, you know, in order to survive. And I went out and did 126 roadshows and told that story over and over again and said, I'd rather you work with, you know, us all work together collectively to shape what that future looks like. Because, you know, some of you might want to find your, you know, what you really love doing in some other type of career. So I think the third point being, I think don't ignore colleagues. I think irrespective of what your change, your transformation is, you know, actually bring them in, you know, to a degree, but you need to bring them in and, you know, work with them, not do to them.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of flipping the employee model upside down times like that, and putting the agents and the employees and the shop floor workers and the customer
Yep.
facing people right at the top of the pyramid, because they're the people that are going to bear the brunt of the changes. They're going to potentially benefit the most, not
Yep.
necessarily financially, but procedurally and in their day to day lives. And I think it's really important that they come on the journey with you. Too many times I've seen people profess to have brought their staff on the journey with them, but it was kind of a newsletter that went out, or it was a quick video on
Absolutely.
stream at some point, and like there wasn't really any engagement about that, and it was still
Yeah.
down to them, not with them. And despite
Yeah.
and I'm sure the leadership teams thought they'd done a grand job of it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately,
And often, you know, we're so busy, we want to move on to the next thing. It's like tick box, yeah, on the program. Like, yeah, we've done that, we've done that. And you know what? Actually, it's not easy engaging with people because, you know, we're all humans and we like to ask questions. So I think sometimes people sort of, you know, avoid it because they go in, I don't, and it's not just about, you know, major check, it's about designing solutions, you know, back to my, you know, flight experience. If they'd actually got some colleagues involved in that process, I'm sure the colleagues did not come up with that. Let's send a push notification every 5 minutes. So yeah, I think as I say, the third point is back to that, you know, bring the colleagues in, get them involved, let them help shape, you know, tell the story, you know, and as I say, back to the storytelling and the cost benefit case, you know, we're not people are not idiots, you know, they need to understand the value that a business creates and what a business needs to do to operate. So
And crucially, and you mentioned automation there, but technology is not here to replace humans doing a human job.
no.
Technology is here to replace the mundane aspects of those
Mm.
jobs. That does mean that some of the jobs that are just mundane jobs, they're probably going to be lost in the not
Yeah.
too distant future. But that doesn't mean the human has any value in that chain, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You say we don't want to go into a restaurant. I know there are restaurants where you can just order off an iPad and pay off the. No, I'd actually like a conversation with somebody, ask them about the food, ask them about. So, as you say, there is a time and place, and I've, driven a lot of automation in my time across the various different industries. We work with clients now around, what does that, automation, simplification, but then added value. What does that whole operating model and that experience look like? So I think it's back to that, design it properly, use the insights, get the data and design it well. Don't rush at things and don't, I think we've just got to stop this, as I would call it, sloppy implementation that's often going on in a lot of organizations.
Fantastic. Um, Unfortunately, that's the 30 minutes up again already. Oh, I say this every week. It seems to get faster. I'm sure somebody pressed the fast forward button when we started the show. I've loved chatting with you, Nicola, and we'll have to do it again sometime next year, I think. But hopefully, everybody who's watched took something away from this. We'll have the episode put up onto our YouTube channel later on. We'll definitely be getting a write up on the website so you guys can kind of, if you want to digest the text version of it, well, that'll be there as well. But by all means, if there are any questions or comments, feel free to pop them in the comments on the LinkedIn or on the YouTube if you're watching us live on YouTube or Twitter or wherever. And we'll do our best to answer them as ever. Nicola, it's been fantastic having you on the show. Is there anything you kind of want to add just before we close the episode off? Is there anything you want to leave the audience with?
No, I think it's just that, as I say, business case, story tell and get colleagues involved. So I think those are probably my sort of three. If anybody wants to sort of take some takeaways, have those three and have a happy birthday tomorrow.
I will. I will. All right, brilliant. Thanks for having me on the show, Nicola. Hopefully
Welcome.
everybody's enjoyed that. And I'll see you all again next Thursday at 3 o'clock. Bye bye.
Brilliant. Cheers, Paul. Have a good day. Bye.